History usually glorifies the victors, but sometimes it remembers the defeated just as vividly, especially when the defeat is monumental. Napoleon Bonaparte is one of the most iconic figures in world history, a man who nearly redrew the map of Europe and rose to absolute power through sheer talent and ambition, only to end his life in exile. This is not a story of triumph. This is the story of a man who came painfully close to reshaping the modern world, but ultimately failed, and in doing so, became a symbol of the greatest downfall in modern history. Born in 1769 on the island of Corsica, just after it became part of France, Napoleon came from minor nobility without true wealth or influence. As a child, he spoke French with a thick Corsican accent, was mocked by his peers in military school, and yet displayed early signs of discipline, self-education, and relentless ambition. He devoured the works of Plutarch, idolized Julius Caesar, and saw war, power, and legacy not as abstractions, but as personal goals. The French Revolution created chaos, but also opportunity. Napoleon was quick to act. He first rose to prominence as a brilliant artillery officer, then suppressed a royalist uprising in Paris with decisive force. He was given command of the French army in Italy, where he led a lightning campaign that shocked Europe. By 1804, Napoleon crowned himself Emperor of the French, a bold, unprecedented move that declared power was no longer a matter of bloodline, but of merit. His ambition was limitless, and his success undeniable. Over the next decade, Napoleon crushed coalition after coalition. At Austerlitz, Jena, and Wagram, he proved almost untouchable. He redrew borders, installed his brothers as kings, and reshaped governments. The Napoleonic Code, his civil law reforms, survive to this day in legal systems across the world. At his peak, Napoleon controlled most of continental Europe. His empire stretched from Spain to Poland. He manipulated economies with the continental system, defied monarchs, and turned France into a machine of conquest. He seemed unstoppable, and that belief in his own invincibility would prove fatal. In 1812, Napoleon made a catastrophic decision. He invaded Russia with over 600,000 men, the largest army Europe had ever seen. He expected a quick campaign. Instead, the Russians retreated, burned their own resources, and lured the French deeper into the vast, empty territory. At Borodino, Napoleon fought one of the bloodiest battles of his career. Though technically a victory, it proved indecisive. When he entered Moscow, the city was burning and deserted. With no supplies and winter approaching, the only option was retreat. Starvation, cold, disease, and Russian raids decimated the Grand Army. Fewer than 100,000 returned. It wasn't just a defeat, it was a collapse.
After the Russian disaster, Europe rose against him. Prussia, Austria, Russia, and Britain formed a new alliance. In 1814, Paris fell. Napoleon abdicated and was exiled to the small island of Elba off the coast of Italy. But he wasn't finished. In February 1815, he escaped Elba, landed in southern France, and marched north. Troops sent to arrest him joined him instead. The people welcomed him. In just 20 days, he returned to power. It was one last gamble, a final charge. The period would become known as the 100 Days. On June 18, 1815, the decisive battle took place near the village of Waterloo, in modern-day Belgium. The weather was terrible. His army was tired. Yet for a brief moment, he nearly won. The British, led by the Duke of Wellington, were under heavy pressure. Napoleon's forces broke through in places. Victory seemed within reach, but then the Prussians arrived. Led by General Blücher, they attacked Napoleon's right flank, overwhelming his exhausted troops. The French lines collapsed. Panic spread. The battle was lost. It was final. This time, the Allies made no mistakes. Napoleon was exiled again, this time to the remote island of St. Helena in the South Atlantic, far from Europe, far from power, far from redemption. There, he lived the rest of his life under constant British supervision. He dictated his memoirs, reflected on his legacy, and slowly declined in health. He died in 1821, at the age of 51, stripped of his empire, his title, and his country, but not his influence. Why call Napoleon a great loser? Not because he lacks skill, quite the opposite. He may have been the greatest military mind of his era, but because he dared too much, pushed too far, and believed himself unstoppable. His downfall wasn't the result of a single mistake, but of the belief that he could bend history to his will alone. And yet, despite his failure, he remains immortal. Through law, through memory, through the mark he left on modern Europe. Napoleon Bonaparte lost everything, and that's exactly why the world still remembers his name.
If you found this story compelling, consider supporting the channel by leaving a like and subscribing. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.